Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at how to fly the VL-3. Now the VL-3 is exactly what you think, a very light version 3. This is a very small aircraft. It is a spectacularly high performance aircraft, and it is a nice little two-seater. For those of you who have given this thing a try, it's a blast. Honestly, if I owned one of these planes in this game, this would probably be one of them just because of how incredibly versatile it is. That being said, if you have a family, they're going to have to be extremely thin if they're going to be able to fit in the back seat here, because as you can see, there's really not a lot. This is like the definition of a sporty sport plane. Let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, we got to get this thing running. Now this aircraft is a classic design. You've got the left tank, right fuel tank. I love the fact you have this huge stick, basically, bonk, ouch, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, oh, stop it, oh, torture. It's a nice little stick just sort of chilling right there in the middle. So we're going to go and get this thing started. I've poked around online, I read some POHs, and kind of have an abbreviated method. Ooh, look at the propeller. Carbon fiber. Nice. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go and flip on the fuel systems. We got one of these little teeny tiny engines up in the front, but trust me, it's more than enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hold my mouse over this. Clicking isn't going to do anything for you, which is kind of a pain, unless you click to the opposite side of where you need to put it. So for us, if we want to put it in the left fuel tank, if you notice, if you click it, it kind of fights you like this. One of the things I find that works better is if you put this to counterclockwise on the arrow and just roll the mouse, you can set it wherever you want. Again, be careful when you grab this. It's a kind of a common mistake that people accidentally with this one. Now we'll go ahead and start this up. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to go ahead and flip on our strobe light to let everybody know around us we're going to get started. And you press the battery button. One of the things I do not like about this version is this little display is supposed to tell us what our RPM is, which is really important with this aircraft because we have a whole setup process for it, and we'll take a look at that in a few minutes. But what we're going to do for now is we're basically going to crank the thing and make sure it works. So I'm going to take a look around, make sure there's nobody going to get chopped up today. That guy's a long ways away from us, so I'm not going to worry about him too much. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in, jam the key in, yell my usual clear prop, and you just kind of crank it a little bit. It does not take much to get this thing rolling. It's like brum, brum. Now if it's a very cold day, when you do the startup process, we have an engine choke over here. The way it works is pretty straightforward. You pull the engine choke out. Like I said, I'm talking really cold. Crank the thing. When it catches, just push the engine choke back in, and it should keep the thing running pretty smoothly for you. A lot of times you kind of play with it in and out in order to get it to work. So we're started. So go ahead and pop on the Avionics Master. Classic. I've got all of these old school Garmins where basically they take all the new stuff and crank it down into a little, basically almost like a graphics tablet kind of a thing like that. So you're going to get TAWS test. So what do we need to do now? Now the first thing we need to do is we need to warm up. So this particular aircraft, you can take a look right now. We've got plenty of oil pressure, got plenty of oil temperature. Again, I've cracked the throttle just a little bit to kind of keep it happy. As long as you stay in the green, according to the book, it should be fine. Like I said, I wouldn't worry about it too much. One thing you do got to watch out for, though, is, like I said, double check to make sure you're in the green. We're getting a voltage warning here, which doesn't surprise me, but I'm not worried about it. Notice how hot my cylinders are. These are water-cooled engines. Now, the advantage to water-cooled engines is they basically don't have issues with overheating once you get in the air. But on the ground, you run the risk of getting really hot. They actually run a little cold in the air. Next thing we have to do is we have to set up the RPM right now. Right now, the aircraft is limited to 4,675 RPM. But if you take a look at this little display below it, it says we're supposed to be using 5,800 RPM here. So what you do is you can grab this little knob and you can kind of roll the mouse. You can also come over here. You can play with this little increase button. You can press and hold that on all afternoon and crank it up. Now notice what happens. It caps automatically at 5,500. If we need to go up and down, we can play with this. And one of the things I sort of miss is we don't have this little button right here that we can just go boop and go ahead and click it to automatic versus manual mode, which is a shame. The other thing is we'll never actually produce our maximum power. Now, one of the things that was kind of fun in the earlier version is you could actually use your RPM lever on the aircraft itself to dictate what RPM you're actually going to be cruising at. But unfortunately, we've lost that ability. Now I'm noticing my RPM starting to drop off a little bit. Obviously, we're starting to get a little warm. Give just a little more throttle. And I think we're in pretty good shape there. Give it just a few more. There we go. That's an engine that's warming up for you. So be mindful of that when you are using it. So let's go ahead and head somewhere. We're going to do a pretty short flight here. This is Ellington, Connecticut here. Select waypoint. I love how it's a touch display. You just pick up the display that you want and go to where you want to go with it. So in this case, we're going to make this one pretty short today. So let's pop over to, let's go to Robertson. So I'm going to go up to numbers. I'm going to do 4. I'm going to go back to ABCs. I'm going to do Bravo. Back to this one, 8. Press enter, press activate, and now it's going to go ahead and project it. Notice my GPS mode has already been selected. If I needed to change it, I could come over here and set my source appropriately. Obviously, we want this to be on GPS because we want to head over there like that. If you do get a screen that looks like that and you're like, make it go away, make it go away. Oh, look at this. Hello. Absolutely, I want that turned on. We have the bearing pointers, we have our timers, we have more options, everything like that. Pressing split will not make this go away. You simply click back on this guy and it will go ahead and pop it away. Coming down here, we have an option for heading and altitude. We have an option for course and barometric pressure. We're going to go ahead and select a more appropriate altitude. Again, it's a pretty short flight for us. So I'll do about 2,500 feet, which is, of course, going to send us sailing through another airspace. Transponder mode, of course, we want to flip down into altitude mode. You simply select the one that you want. This is going to freak out a little on you. Don't worry about it. It's not going to give you any issues. If you needed to ident, you could go ahead and mingle that button right there. I'm getting the oil pressure warning again, so I'll give it just a teeny tiny bit more power, and it should go ahead and now pop back up to the one we have. Things to watch out for in this aircraft is we are both retractable landing gear and we have flaps. Our retractable landing gear, we have a switch for it, which blows my mind a little bit. I appreciate it's got the red bar on it, so you can hook your finger into the red bar and click it with your thumb, which is nice. I don't like this very much, and I love the fact that it has an auto switch, but unfortunately, they don't actually let us do it. What a bummer. All right, so let's get this row in a show. So I'm going to take a look over to my right. There's no wind today. It's very, very early in the morning for us, so I'm not worried about it too much. Give it just a teeny tiny bit of power here, and now we're going to start migrating our way over. Oh, you look a little out of place. You know what looks more out of place, though, is that right there. I'm sorry to say, but Ellington Airport does not have full-service fuel. It actually kind of bothers me that they've even simulated it that way. Go ahead and pop onto the runway here. Well, this is a very short field, but again, we are a very, very, very powerful aircraft for our size, so I'm not really worried about that. Line ourselves up. We're going to give it just a little bit of throttle. We're just going to check to make sure RPM is set correctly, which it is. Give it just a moment. Let's see if we can get our oil pressure up high enough to actually be able to safely take off here. Give it just a little more. We're going to come up, and getting a little bit more, and we're on our way. Whee! There it goes. I knew it would do that. All right, so our rotation speed on this thing is basically nothing. As soon as you start to get enough speed and it shows it into the white, there's 30, there's 35. I'm going to gently pull back on the stick once you get to 40. And this thing comes snap into the air like that. Unbelievable performance in this platform. We're going to be aiming for right around 60. So I'm going to let the nose come down just a little bit. Go ahead and flick up the switch, which is going to go ahead and retract my landing gear. You've got to get the landing gear out of the way on this plane quickly. If you leave the landing gear out, it really, really impairs your performance. Remember, we're not that high power for an airplane. We're just very, very lightweight. So we're on our way. Like you can see, like I'm holding right on the tippy top of that white arc here. This seems to give us a pretty good performance. Landing gear up. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull the aircraft to the left. And you can see, because of the way the FADEC is set up, it's holding us at the wrong RPM, which I actually find a little interesting. Interesting. There it goes. We actually did a takeoff at less than full power there. Interesting. I wonder when they changed that. That's all right, though. I can see that I'm now producing my 5,800, even though this is set to 5,500. Nice. Nice. It's all right, though. Like I said, as long as it works for you, it works for you. All right, going to go ahead and climb. Man, this thing is like a rocket now. I was wondering why that thing was taking off with so little power. Again, things to watch out for. I blame that on my little propeller switch on my throttle there. I put it all the way forward, but apparently it needed to be refreshed is the best way to describe it. Climbing up, climbing up. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Look at this thing, though. I'm at 15 degrees climb, and I'm way past my VY. And my vertical speed right now, what are we getting for vertical speed? Go take a look if we can even see. I'm getting 2,400 feet per minute. That's incredible. There are very, very few aircraft of the general aviation universe that aren't turbo-powered, or turbocharged, no, I'm sorry, gas turbine-powered that would give you this capability. But again, I'm so impressed with that. So we get to our 2,500. All we do is release pressure on the stick, and this aircraft drops right off the nose on us. Level it off a little bit here. Let the plane pick up a bit of speed, and we can go ahead and come to the right. I love the fact that the turn coordinators are located right between your lap, so when you take your little tight turns with it, you can just go ahead and do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to let the engine build up a ton of speed here, which is exactly not what it does because it's already at full speed, but the aircraft can build up some speed. Give it a little bit of trim. The trim in this aircraft is very polite, and we're about to overspeed the plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and back out the throttle. Keep in mind, backing out the throttle is half the equation here. We have to also back out our RPM control. Now, if you remember a few minutes ago, I'll go ahead and level this thing off the best I can. We were taking a look at this little chart here, and you can see our 75% power is 26 in 5,000. So what I'll do is I'll come over here, go ahead and set this to 26, manifold pressure, and we're going to drop the RPM down to 5,000, and that should give us about the correct pressure. Let's see, 5,000, right, again, I'm using my propeller control here, not that little wheel, which apparently is not set up the way that it says in the book. That's okay, though. There we go, 26 and 5,000. So now the aircraft is set to 75% power, and that's as complicated as that needs to be. I'll go ahead and drop back down to my little cruise altitude here. That looks about right, and I'll go ahead and lift the nose up. And we are on our way. Like I said, we are thoroughly into the yellow arc here. So any sudden movements will damage the aircraft. If you actually take a look over here on the right, you can see the maneuvering speed on this aircraft is 88 knots. We're doing 122 knots, which means if we make any sudden moves, we could potentially damage the aircraft very easily. The other thing to look at, too, is we are way into the yellow arc here, which means if there's any form of turbulence, we have to actually use a lesser power. So while this aircraft is very, 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 very effective and is very, very fast and it's got a great performance, especially when you set up the engine correctly, it is still a very, very tricky aircraft in the sense that you can damage very quickly and easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to proceed. I've got all the useful information up on the tippy top, and let's use some movie magic here. There we go. That's a little better. By the way, in the real world, those towers are incredibly intimidating. Let's go ahead and descend. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and smoothly pull the throttle back. Remember, we're a liquid-cooled aircraft, which makes it a little bit easier for us to do descents. You're not worrying about that shock cooling because, again, the liquid that cools us is going to basically help take the edge off. There's Robertson Field. It's right there off our nose there. We're going to go ahead and pass right through the midfield. Then we're going to come around. Things we have to do before landing, though, is we have to double-check to make sure all of our settings are set correctly. Takeoff and landing is supposed to be 5,500 RPM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look over here. I'm going to go ahead and push my propeller control forward. Like I said, I find it interesting, the two buttons that don't necessarily agree with each other. Kind of weird, not gonna lie. All right, we're just gonna kind of set ourselves up for a landing. Now, one of the weird parts about landing this aircraft is not so much the landing process, which is incredibly simple, but rather it's going to be the process of going around. When you apply full power with this thing, it's because of how light it is, it does one of these on you, so you have to be very, very kind of almost ready for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop around here. You can see I'm just looking down at the runway. There's a calm winds again today, so I'm not worried about things. Lovely runway 2 in the real world. That is where I did my first unassisted landing. I'm kind of proud of that one. There's a big swamp right there, as you can probably see. And every time we went to land the plane, it's like, what are you doing? And it starts bumping you around like unbelievably hard. But there is a really, really nice viewpoint right there. You've got that little main street in Plainville, Connecticut, that you can actually use as a nice little reference to kind of get ourselves all lined up at the end of the runway. Just kind of one of those fun things for those of you who have been around this area. So we're going to go ahead and zip across the top here. We're going to enter into a left downwind for runway 2. Slowing down. Again, we're just coasting at this point. Looks good. Go ahead and give it a gentle tap to the left. I just love how this aircraft can do both like high performance speeds, and it can also do like normal, very light aircraft speeds. All right, at 60, we're going to go ahead and pop the flaps down. We're going to go ahead and drop a notch of gear right away. What is a notch of gear exactly? Is that like when you put the wheels partially down? What is this, an I-16? No, you want to put your gear down. All right, we're looking pretty good. We're going to go start a little descent here. So we're going to push the nose over. Again, your approach speed is very, very slow. So what I like to do is pop in the second notch of flaps. So I'm at my second click here. If you actually look out the window here, we can't see the flaps. Oh no, what's wrong with the plane? There's nothing wrong with the split flaps. So we're going to keep cruising up. We're going to go for the 45 degree. That looks like the 45 degree right now. We're going to go ahead and take ourselves to the left. And our approach speed, now remember, it should be 1.3 times stall speed. So 0.3 of 30 is basically 10. Your approach speed is 40 knots. Which is incredible given that I'm not able to get this plane. I'm actually going to have to come out a little bit further wide here. Okay, we're a little high, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and pull this thing nice and tight. We'll go ahead and use some motor glider skills here. And do one of these. That looks pretty good. I'm going to come around this way. Again, holding that nose. Like I said, our approach speed is right around 40. I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, some good motor glider skills here. All right, there we go. And we're just going to be giving up a little bit of that altitude in exchange for a little bit of our speed here. There we go. Look at that. Motor glider skills FTW. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to land. Like I said, you're looking for a 1.3 over stall. Stall's 30. And that would give us about a 40 knot approach. 42 is fine. Got a little bit of a crosswind here. I'm just going to kind of bring it to the left. Gentle little crab. Again, I barely got the throttle cracked to keep this thing stable. This plane does not need much to safely land. There we go. That's a big old number 2 there. I don't like to pull the throttle out all the way on this one. I like to pull it out partial the way because this plane gets really funky when you get low. Like I said, really funky. Whoa. Remember, you're made out of carbon fiber, and now we're down on the ground as smooth as butter. Well, of course, it depends on the type of butter you use, but you get the feeling. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep controlling the plane until we come to a complete stop. We're going to embarrass ourselves realizing that was a true crosswind. Not bad. Brakes work great on this thing. I go ahead and pull them. I go ahead and take a nice little tug, and now we go pop ourselves off. So as I said, this is an amazing airplane. It has a very, 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 very good range. Our entire flight, by the way, in case you're curious, took 1.6 gallons of fuel. That's it. And again, I was riding the throttle pretty hard the entire flight. And we took a half a tank of gas on this thing to give you an idea of just how little fuel this actual aircraft would consume if you're trying to do a longer flight with it. Of course, for those of you who like to fly in VR, this is such a cool plane because its visibility is completely unobstructed unless you're trying to look out behind you. And let's go ahead and chop somebody up with my little propeller here because I'm such a mean guy. Hey, there's another one. So other than that, hopefully you enjoyed the video. I encourage you to check this plane out. It is the ultimate lightweight plane. Come get some. Oh, you're getting in the plane with me. All right, that's fine too. Other than that, enjoy.